In the global energy system, geography can shape the fate of entire economies. Across the narrow waters separating Iran from the Arabian Peninsula lies one of the most important maritime corridors on Earth, the Strait of Hormuz. Every day, millions of barrels of oil pass through this 21-mile-wide channel. Energy shipments from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar must travel through this narrow gateway before reaching global markets. In normal times, the passage operates like a beating heart of the world economy, but in moments of geopolitical crisis, it becomes something else entirely. A pressure point capable of triggering economic shockwaves across the planet. Now, following escalating tensions in the Gulf, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has declared the Strait of Hormuz closed. If the threat becomes reality, nearly one-fifth of the world's oil supply could suddenly be trapped inside the Persian Gulf. Energy markets are already reacting. Shipping companies are pulling vessels from the region. Oil prices are climbing, and governments around the world are scrambling to assess the consequences. Some analysts warn that this moment could echo the energy crisis of 1973. Others believe the disruption could prove even more severe, because in today's globalized economy, the supply chains that depend on stable energy flows are more interconnected than ever before. To understand the stakes of the current crisis, it is necessary to understand the geography of the Strait of Hormuz. The strait sits between Iran to the north and Oman and the United Arab Emirates to the south. At its narrowest point, it measures only about 21 miles wide. Within that space, shipping lanes are even narrower. Large oil tankers must travel through designated corridors just a few miles across. This makes the strait not only strategically important, but also extraordinarily vulnerable. Each day, roughly 20 million barrels of oil pass through the channel. That represents about one-fifth of the world's daily petroleum consumption. But oil is not the only resource moving through these waters. The strait is also the primary export route for liquefied natural gas from Qatar, the world's largest LNG exporter. Together, these energy flows make the Strait of Hormuz one of the most critical infrastructure points in the global economy. If the corridor becomes blocked or unsafe for navigation, energy markets immediately feel the impact. And because global energy prices affect everything from transportation to food production, the consequences can spread far beyond the oil industry. One common question arises whenever tensions flare in the Strait of Hormuz. Why can't oil simply travel another route? The answer lies in the geography of energy infrastructure. Most Gulf oil production facilities are connected directly to terminals located inside the Persian Gulf. For many producers, the Strait of Hormuz is the only viable export pathway. Saudi Arabia operates pipelines that can redirect some shipments to ports on the Red Sea, but the capacity of these systems is limited. Even if fully utilized, they could replace only a fraction of the oil normally transported through the strait. Qatar faces an even more severe constraint. Its liquefied natural gas exports rely almost entirely on tanker shipments through Hormuz. In other words, if the strait closes, a large portion of global energy exports has nowhere else to go. As the crisis intensified, shipping companies began taking precautionary measures. Major maritime operators have started halting vessel transits through the Persian Gulf. Insurance costs for tankers operating in the region have surged dramatically. For many shipping companies, the risks of operating in a potential conflict zone are simply too high. As a result, dozens of vessels have already diverted their routes. The effect resembles a maritime traffic jam, a growing cluster of tankers waiting for clarity before entering the strait. Modern global trade relies heavily on a concept known as just-in-time logistics. Instead of storing large inventories, companies depend on steady, predictable supply flows. Energy disruptions threaten this system. If oil shipments slow or stop, transportation costs rise across the entire global supply chain. Factories may face delays, shipping schedules become unpredictable, and consumer prices can increase rapidly. Energy markets react quickly to geopolitical uncertainty. Following the announcement of the potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz, oil prices began climbing sharply. Brent crude, the international benchmark, moved toward the psychologically important $100 per barrel threshold. But the question troubling analysts is whether the price spike could go much higher. Some projections suggest that a prolonged disruption could push oil prices dramatically upward. In extreme scenarios, analysts warn that prices could approach $200 per barrel. Higher oil prices function as a kind of global tax. When energy becomes more expensive, transportation costs rise. Those costs eventually appear in the price of food, consumer goods, and industrial products. Economists often refer to this phenomenon as a war tax on the global economy. For deeper geopolitical and economic analysis on global security, visit nexusinsight.org. Subscribe.